Well, we are sitting on the doorstep of full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon, with strikes over 300 Hezbollah targets over the past few days, and Israel considering a full-scale invasion of Lebanon. And this comes as the Biden administration is now admitting that they want to de-escalate, but they're going to do it through escalating. They support the plan of de-escalation through escalation. What in the hell is going on right now in the Middle East? We are on the brink of a massive war. Dan Cohen from Uncaptured Media just returned from Israel and joins us now. Dan, great to see you. Welcome to the show. Hopefully you can help make sense of what's actually happening there right now. What are you hearing the latest from your sources on the ground there?
Well, it's the biggest escalation since this war, this regional war, began on October 7th of 2023. The largest escalation on Israel's northern front with Lebanon. So far today, I mean, the latest numbers are 274 deaths, more than in Lebanon, more than 1,000 wounded. That includes those deaths include 21 children, 39 women, 2 medics. They're images of ambulance targeted by the Israeli military. So it's very reminiscent of the early days of the war on Gaza following the October 7th attack. And I think we're going to see over at least the next days and possibly weeks, this escalation continue, and many, many more deaths of indiscriminate targeting by Israel. So when they say Hezbollah targets, it's the same sort of claims they made about Gaza, where they would just bomb any kind of target, whether that's a civilian house. And they've put out a cartoon, actually, another animation saying that houses in southern Lebanon have Hezbollah missiles inside them. If we think about the cartoon they put out in, I think, November of 2023, saying that there was a Hamas command center under Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza. And then when they actually got down there, their whole proof of some kind of command center was they showed a calendar on the wall and said this is where they kept the hostages, but it was actually just a calendar. So the whole thing was a farce, and this is clearly a farce of what they're claiming to target. What they're actually implementing is something called the Dahiya Doctrine. This is an Israeli military strategy that was formalized in 2006 by then Israeli military chief of staff Gadi Eisenkot, who today is, would be considered some kind of leftist in Israel, and is a politician. But basically the Dahiya Doctrine, named for the southern Beirut neighborhood of Dahiya, which is kind of a base of support for Hezbollah, is the logic is that you destroy the civilian infrastructure and population and target civilians in an effort to turn the civilian population against the resistance group. So the idea is you just kill as many Lebanese indiscriminately as possible, make their lives miserable, and then they'll turn against the resistance. Now, this is what I would say is typical colonial thinking. It's completely backwards, because what happens is the more you destroy a country, and this is, we can see this throughout history, whether in Afghanistan or Vietnam or, many countries that have gone through foreign occupations and
the bombing of Britain
to liberate themselves
by the Nazis.
Right. People basically, they end up supporting the resistance. The support for the resistance hardens. And so I think that's, what we're going to see is, as this Dahiya Doctrine is implemented on a greater scale than it was even before in 2006 when Israel used it, then it's going to be more destruction and more resistance. And Hezbollah is a much more capable military force than anything Israel has dealt with to this point, certainly more than Hamas, which is very plucky and has been, in its incredible network of tunnels under Gaza. But it's Hamas. Gaza is under siege. So the fact that they were able to build that tunnel network, develop the weapons, some smuggled, but mostly through their own ingenuity and local production inside Gaza. Well, Lebanon does not have that problem, does not have that issue of not having, not being under siege by Israel. So Lebanon Hezbollah has much more advanced missiles and weaponry. It has much more experience also, because it is relatively recently, came out of the war in Syria, which since 2011 was fighting ISIS and Al Qaeda Takfiris and CIA warlords under the banner of the Free Syrian Army that were dedicated to overthrowing the Syrian government and raising the black flag of ISIS over Damascus and eventually to Tehran and Beirut too. So Hezbollah intervened along with the Syrian army and eventually Russia inside Syria to fight these terrorists back. And it gained a ton of invaluable fighting experience there. So Israel, I don't think, is prepared in any way for the kind of resistance it's going to see. First from Hezbollah's arsenal, it's now, we've seen the first strikes of its more medium range missiles that have hit settlements deep inside the West Bank, like Ariel and Karnei Shomron. There's reports those have been hit, and then let alone the possibility of an Israeli ground invasion into Lebanon, which is just going to go miserably for Israel, and of course will cost the Lebanese civilian population dearly. Will cost them massive amounts of life. But Netanyahu's stated goal of we're going to return normalcy and security to the north of Israel. So the residents who have been displaced from the north since October 7th and are extremely frustrated and angry at the government for failing to bring some kind of security, well, that is now going to be put off even more. And those neighborhoods, which have been and cities which have been abandoned, very well may turn into smoldering piles of rubble. So, just as Netanyahu lied on after October 7th and said, we're going to try to bring the hostages back from Gaza, it was never about that. And he's now lying and saying we're trying to bring security to the north. It's not about that either. It's just going up the escalation ladder because Israel doesn't have any alternative domestically because of its politics. So I think what we're going to see is large swaths of Lebanon will be, especially southern Lebanon, will be decimated by Israel. We'll see huge amounts of civilian casualties, as we're already seeing today, reminiscent of the early months of the Gaza war. But what Israel's not prepared for is the damage that Hezbollah will be able to inflict on Israeli territory. And the Israeli national psyche is, I think, unable to cope with that. We've seen for a variety of reasons. One, it's extremely traumatized. Israel is not used to extended, protracted wars. It's used to, short, fast operations of ferocious bombing backed by the U.S. as a superpower, and then it, arbitrarily declares a ceasefire and says we won, even though there was, they didn't actually achieve anything other than massive amounts of destruction, but no strategic goals have been accomplished. And so that's what it's accustomed to. It's not accustomed to seeing its own cities take such heavy damage. So more and more Israelis are leaving the country. I was just looking at some statistics that are kind of dense, but I'm just looking at some of the data that has recently been published by the Israeli government on emigration from Israel. And keep in mind, there was already a massive amount of emigration in 2023 before October 7th as a result of Israel's judicial reform, judicial coup, whatever you want to call it. But basically the movement by the government to get rid of the Supreme Court, which liberal Israeli society was very opposed to. At that point, about 30% of Israelis were considering leaving the country altogether. And then October 7th happened. Now, since October 7th, this is the data from the first 7 months of 2024, is there an increase of 58.9% of immigrants from the previous year, which was already much higher. So we're already seeing in the early months of this year, the first up until July, a huge increase, an unprecedented increase of Israelis leaving the country, saying, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. This is just, it's not worth the price to live here. And then now we have this escalation in Lebanon. One more thing, I had a friend, I spoke to an Israeli friend who lives somewhat near Gaza today, who I've worked with in the past. And he, on October 7th, I called him and asked if he was all right. And he said he was hiding in his house. Since then, he's been okay. Now he tells me my cousins who live in the north, I'm telling them to come to my house because it's not safe. It's not safe up there. So, the south is not really safe either. It's not as if Hamas has been defeated. All those military battalions are still in existence and still carrying out operations against the Israeli military. So that objective of defeating Hamas has not happened, is not anywhere near happening, despite the claims of Israeli military and government officials. And now they're opening a new front that they can't not handle in the north. So, I mean, Israel, I think, is just opening another can of worms, another escalation that its population cannot handle. So, and again, this is thanks to the unbridled support of the Biden or Kamala Harris or whoever's running the ghost ship of the Biden administration, with their support, their open support of Israel's so-called de-escalation through escalation strategy. So this is basically leading to an expanded disaster on top of what already is a disaster.
And if you watch all the Sunday shows, the Biden administration is working tirelessly to bring about a ceasefire right now. They're working tirelessly to bring about a ceasefire. Yeah, what are you smoking? That's a big line of garbage and a total line of bullshit. Dan Cohen, who just returned from Israel, unbelievable analysis and an understanding of that region. I guess we'll be watching what the United States response will be as this descends into full-blown war in Lebanon. And a lot of people are going to die. I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, huge swaths of Lebanon are going to be destroyed, but also huge swaths of Israel are going to be destroyed. As our friend Douglas McGregor likes to say, make peace now, you fools. Dan, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Clayton.